Hello Animorphs fans and welcome back to the Animorphs universe. Today we're doing another AniLysis and it is on one of the auxiliary Animorphs. An auxiliary Animorph called Ray. Not much is known about Ray apart from the obvious fact that he is one of the 17 auxiliary Animorphs. I won't go into too much detail about that because that will be for a separate video covering the auxiliaries as a group. We're just talking specifically about Ray, what we know about Ray. And quite frankly, it's not very much. We only hear about Ray in book 53, The Answer, and this is the context for it. Marco, did we lose anyone last night? Yeah, 3 of Toby's people, 1 of James's people, the guy named Ray, and you, or so we thought. I had fully demorphed. I sat down hard. Ray was a kid born with severe birth defects. He had acquired a leopard as his main morph. He loved the physical grace of the animal, a grace he'd never experienced in his human body. This is where we're first introduced to Ray, and obviously basically the last, because he dies in a battle. Which battle? It was the battle in book 53. Okay, so they've already destroyed the main Yeerk pool back in 52. That's been demolished, and now the Yeerks are, they've basically sent a bunch of Taxxons down to effectively mine another Yeerk pool, like rapid Yeerk pool creation. So there's all these Taxxons going down to this area, into this big old crater, trying to sort that area out for another Yeerk pool or a temporary Yeerk pool. Obviously the animals want to put a stop to this, so the Animorphs, a group of auxiliaries, and some of the Free Hork-Bajir attack this place. James, I yelled, now! Clear across the crater, James and 7 of his people in Morph erupted amid the Taxxons. That would keep the security forces from concentrating. But now the easy part was definitely over. Hork-Bajir were piling into the melee. It was the difference between fighting big, nasty, but vulnerable worms and fighting walking razor blades. The bug fighters opened fire without warning. They fired on Taxxon and human controllers and Hork-Bajir alike. Unfortunately, it is this part of the battle where we can only assume that Ray is killed, because he is killed by Dracon Beam. How are they taking it? James's people. About like we were taking your death, Jake. Not well. At least it was quick. Dracon Beam. He never knew what hit him. Ray's influence on the story is... It's largely around how the other auxiliaries react. So there's obviously 16 auxiliaries left, and they're about to go into the final battle. We're coming up to that big final battle now. And this is the first auxiliary who has died. So, yeah, definitely the first one that has died. And so James and his team are reacting to this, and this is an interesting paragraph, and it shows off where Jake is now, shows how ruthless he is. You want to come up, Lila, or what? Good kitty. Let's read the quote together. It's going to be as dangerous as it gets, and I have a very tough assignment for you. Okay, well, you know I'm in, but I'll need to talk to the others, see how they feel. I think some of them will want to sit this one out. I mean, after losing Ray. I mean, Jake, some of the young ones, you know, some of them are having... James, we didn't give them the morphing power so they could have fun flying around. This is when we need them. All of them. You understand? You've taken on the role as their leader, so lead. I want them all. Every last one. Jake, some of these kids, I mean, they're all their families have, you know? They're still just starting to deal with Ray's death. It's not like we haven't fought. I can't... Look, if we lose this battle, it's over. You understand me? Before this night is over, the casualties will be piled high, and some of you standing here right now will be dead. And I don't care, because we are going to win. Is that clear? Ray's death is having a big effect on the other auxiliary Animorphs, to the point where James, as the leader of the auxiliary Animorphs, comes to Jake and says, can we slow down a bit? Jake, coming into the final battle, is basically saying, on your bike, son. No. They're going to fight. We gave them that power, they agreed to use it, and we are going to use it. Because remember, since book 47, Jake has been all about using every single last pawn in his arsenal. Of course, James and the rest of the auxiliaries then go ahead, and then they all perish in that final battle, even more than Jake said would die eventually. So that is all we really get on Ray. So what can we say about him? He had the leopard morph, and I did look back at previous books up to book 50 to see if there are any auxiliaries in leopard morph. I didn't, and if I did miss it, which I highly doubt I did, please do let me know. But this is the first time we hear anything of Ray specifically. He would have been in the same building, I'd assume, as the rest of the auxiliaries, where all 17 came from. What we can gather from the quote about him enjoying the leopard's grace and movement is that Ray had a genetic deformity that affected his motility. We can assume it's genetic because by this, I'm guessing, I think actually, was it in book 50 they said only 2 or 3 recovered after morphing, so it wasn't genetic defects, it was stuff they picked up after being born. Of course, it wasn't a genetic thing. Most of the auxiliaries were they had genetic issues, and I can only imagine that Ray was one of those. So he had genetic abnormality, which meant that he couldn't move. I imagine he was probably wheelchair bound. That's all I can really say, because he then enjoys the grace of the leopard, who can obviously run around and do leopardy things, like big cat things. So I am going to assume that he is a wheelchair-bound kid who maybe has leg issues or spinal deformity to the point where he can't walk. He died during that battle in the Taxon pit, and it's said that he died by Dracon beam fire, and he was killed instantly because, as Marco said, he didn't even have time to know what hit him effectively. Which is a bit strange, because we've looked at Dracon beams before, and they would deliberately decide to make the person who gets shot suffer. They sort of get hit and they dissolve. It's not like a bullet, it's more like a laser phaser thing. So it's just like concentrated radioactive wave, whereas a bullet, you know, it's a physical bang. It's a bullet. If it hits you in the head, you know, you're more than likely to, you know, die instantly. Whereas Dracon beams have always struck me as they hit you and it just creates like an effect through the body, and it doesn't matter where it hits you. No, it does, but that depends on setting. So there's all these little bits, and we will cover the Dracon beam at some point. There's various different settings. Then again, I imagine if it's from a bug fighter, probably bigger beams. So probably massive beam hits Ray and it's just like gone, which it probably hit him in the head or something. Either that, or it's a big enough beam that it just completely wipes him out in one fell swoop, just instant dissolve, whatever. Marco probably saw it happen if he has that sort of information, unless he's just trying to lessen the blow for Jake, but I'm assuming Marco's telling the truth here. And I'm saying it was probably the bug fighter because it was Taxons in the pit. They can hold Dracon beams, but that was never mentioned, and the Taxons basically ran off or got killed. And then the Hawk-Bajir came in, and they'd be going in with their blades flashing and all that, and then the bug fighters came up firing Dracon beams at basically anything that moved. So what can we say in conclusion, in summary? Ray was a disabled kid who couldn't walk, who had no use of his legs. He really enjoyed the leopard morph, which became his battle morph, and he went down with that team of 7, along with James, and so basically James and 6 of the auxiliaries, including Ray. Went into that battle, and he, as well as 3 Hawk-Bajir, didn't make it, probably just bang gone through bug fighter Dracon beam fire. And the lasting effect of Ray after his death was, you know, that was the first time the auxiliaries had that thought of, oh damn, we're likely going to die. And of course they do, which is topic for another video. We will cover the auxiliaries as a group, where we'll talk about, you know, where they all lived and all that. So I'm not going to cover that in the Ray video, because I'm going to whack that. I've got to do 17 of these videos. They're going to be quite short, snappy, and then we'll do the big auxiliary analysis video at some point. So that is Ray, the first auxiliary Animorph to pop his proverbial clogs. Pop his proverbial cogs. That's the one. And it was a warning to the other auxiliaries, and regardless, they pressed ahead because they had a planet to save, you know? And war does that. So, thank you very much for watching. That is Ray, and we'll cover him slightly again when we eventually get round to the auxiliary Animorphs general AniLysis video. What's next? Shroomorph, you know, the little mouse-like thing, the shrew. We're going to cover the Shroomorph. Excellent. So, thank you very much for watching from somewhere in the Animorphs universe. I shall see you next time. Ta-ra!